Good evening, everybody. It's Daryl. Welcome back. This is week 3. This is the time we're going to make the presentation, so this should be the really fun week. I want to apologize for last week. I should have been here live, but I got called away. I had to cover a lecture on campus, and that doesn't happen very often, but things do happen, and so we all roll with the punches. Um, I was able to get all of the plans graded today and looked at them. Most of you are on the right track. I saw some really terrific plans. I saw some folks that are a little bit confused about what I meant by a plan. You told me how to make a plan, but you didn't put your own information in there. And that just means that you have more work to do this week because you have to figure out what those answers are. And the whole point of the plan last week was just to get you that further along so that this week you concentrate on simply creating media. And we're going to talk about that. But for the most part, we're trying to take a lot of the extra stuff off your plate this week. The reading is not very intensive. We do have some reading from both chapters that we want to give you. This week's discussion board is not a graded activity, so you don't have to worry about that. And so the only thing that is your really main project this week is getting that first draft done. And it's going to take a lot of work. We're going to talk about it, but I want you to try working on it in the manner that we talked about, where we're going to follow Nancy Duarte's policies. I want you to do the voiceover first. I want you to write that story, get the voiceover done before you ever start working on the slides. I don't want the slides to dictate what you say. I want you to tell your story fully and completely. And once you've done that, start illustrating with slides. So we'll look at a couple of different creative presentation programs. Most of you have been thinking about PowerPoint. A lot of you have now discovered Adobe Spark, and if you like that, I really highly recommend Adobe Spark. I think it's very creative and easy to use. It's lightweight, so it gets out of your way, and you can just be creative. But there are lots of other programs that you can use, and you have permission to use anything that you like. So I'm going to talk about a range of possibilities, and some of those possibilities, a lot of them, don't make the audio for you. So we'll talk about how to do audio as well. We dealt with audio last week, and I got to say I was really impressed with your emotional stories. You guys really killed it. You really kicked in, and you did some good storytelling. I saw some really good use of vocal technique. People were really digging in and telling good stories and being authentic as the word that I want to use, out of the hail dialogue. And I thought that those were really good emotional stories. So very pleased with that. I'll be giving you each individual feedback on those later in the week, but I wanted to get your plans back to you this week so you can go ahead and get started on the presentation. And there's a little bit of reading to do. One of the reading is from Slideology, how to make content that has an impact. And again, these are basic truisms from Nancy Duarte. She's going to say a lot of the things the same way or different ways, but you'll get the gist that there's a couple of things that Nancy Duarte is always pounding on us to do. And the first one, you already know, focus on the audience. Your presentation has to be to a specific group or type of people. You have to know who you're talking to so you can communicate with them. You do not want to just throw your voice out to the universe. You want to know that there are specific people with specific interests so that when you make a reference, when you connect with art, so that when you talk about examples, you're using the examples that will matter to that audience. That's the reason to know who the audience is, so that the examples and references that you're using are relevant. And so it's your job as the creative artist to kind of know who that audience is and know what it's going to take to reach them. And we want to reach them by telling stories. So we want to take all the elements of our life. You know, if we're going to present ourselves to our dream client, we're going to tell, how we got started and where we learned things, and we're going to sort of speak our resumes. But our resumes aren't stories. Our resumes are just a list of things. can't just say your resume and get people excited. You've got to figure out a way to create a context for it, a story, a way that one event leads to another. And that's what we mean by telling stories. If you can turn your life into a story that you're telling about yourself, people are going to be really interested in that. And I have a couple of strategies I'm going to mention. And we have used this week's discussion board. I told you that it's not an activity that's graded. It's basically an open tips board. So you're going to use the discussion board that opens this week, both this week and next week, to share your work with your other classmates. So while you're in progress, if you've written a script and you want to get some feedback on it before you start voicing it, you can post it and ask your classmates to give you some feedback. If you want to record a little bit of your voice before you do the entire 4-minute segment, you can post a sample there and get some feedback. Or if you've got some good advice for other students, if you've used a particular presentation program and you want to recommend it, or you've used a particular program and you think it isn't very good and you want to recommend against it, this is where you're going to share your advice with the students. And to that end, I posted some things in the discussion board already. I posted a couple of videos that I want you to watch that will help you formulate stories, and I posted some links for helpful things. So we're gonna talk about how to craft our life tale into a story that makes people want to know and understand who you are. And after we've crafted that story and we begin to tell it, then we want to choose visuals that show, don't tell. We want to find slides that will help propel the story forward. And to that end, I want to have an exercise that we're going to work on a little bit right now. I mentioned that, this exercise is a little bit like speaking your resume. And there's often a lot of things on your resume that become kind of cliches because everybody puts the same thing on the resume. I'm a self-starter. I'm easy to work with. I'm a uh, uh, I'm a stand-up guy. All of these platitudes that we say, since everyone uses the same words, they tend to not have a little meaning. But they are meaningful. If you are someone who's dependable, you're someone who meets deadlines, if you're earnest, that's a part of your personality. And so the problem is language. If you're using the same language on your resume that everyone else does, then it cancels out. But here you're using media. You're telling your story your own way. So we have an exercise that I want everyone to participate in. I'm going to jump out of here in a second. But I want to think about some commonly used terms, and I want you to try to find some visuals that will tell the story of those terms in dynamic ways that are different from simply the use of the same language that everyone else uses. So let me give you an example. I'm going to pull out here, and I have linked in the discussion board to this. I have a page, a common page that we're all going to work from. It's a Google Doc. So it's a shared document. I'm going to put the link in the discussion in the chat box right now. So you can click on it there. If you're watching the video right now, then you will find the link in the discussion board. So this will be open all week, and this is a live document, meaning that when you come to this document, you have full editing privileges. Anybody who's on this page right now could wipe out the entire page, which is a little bit dangerous. So we have rules for working together. So when we have multiple people on the same document at the same time, it matters where your cursor is, because where your cursor is, you could start deleting things or adding things. And we don't want to mess up what's here. So I don't want anyone to erase the words. But what we've got here, what this is about, I put 5 words here that are the kind of common things that you might put on your resume. That you're adventurous, that you're a self-starter, that you're a team player, you're a problem solver, you're creative. You're already bored because these are the words you've heard over and over again. But these are amazing qualities to have, and they are reasons to hire you. So now your job, your task as an artist, is to find a visual that says that word and excites us. So this is it's called visualizing ideas. I want you to, you don't have to do all of them, but I'd like you to try to do at least one. Pick one of these words and find a visual term that expresses it to your style and makes us excited. So I've got an example here. I'm going to show you an example right now. So I have several boxes here. So don't worry, there's plenty of stuff here. And you'll notice that Brian has already found a great image for adventurous. So we have a lot of stuff that's in place here. But my first one here, to use adventurous, I took this painting. It's a 19th century British painting of a guy standing on the edge of a mountain looking into the abyss. But you know that this is mine because I claimed it. So what we have here are some larger squares where I want you to put your image, and lower squares where you're going to claim them, because it matters. We're all sharing this document. It matters where you put your cursor. So now I'm going to do another one. I'm going to do team player, and I've staked it out. So I want you guys, before you do your image search, to pick a box so that you now have a box that you've told everyone else, hey guys, I'm using this square, you guys can use another. And you don't have to be at the top. It goes on. So just put adventurous in this column, self-starter in this column, creative in this column, etc. And you can come down as far as you want. It doesn't really matter. So find an open square to solve with. Put your name on it first. And then once you've claimed a square, I want you to put your cursor in the big box. It matters where your cursor is lying, because once you've chosen an image, it's going to put the image where your cursor lies. So first we want to lay our cursor in the large box. So we're going to search for terms. And then we're going to come up to insert image, search the web. Now remember, this is a Google Doc. So Google image search is built directly into this page. It's actually pretty cool. So most people, when I ask you to do an image search, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to search on that term. So I said team player. You probably will type in team player. You don't have to. That's not really the most interesting thing to do, but that's probably what most of you will start off with. And of course, there's some players. There's some T players here. There's some interesting sports images. It looks like lacrosse, soccer. There's hockey. These are okay images. Some are dynamic and some aren't. They don't really fit my style, and it isn't really what I was thinking of. But what I want to impress on you is that when you do this search and you put in this term, please don't ever take the very first image. Don't be that guy, because there are thousands of images here. And the whole point of this exercise is for you to pick the image that expresses you in your style to the audience that you're trying to impress. Now remember, this is you going for your dream job. So you're talking to people who you think are probably more visually sophisticated than you are. And you want to impress upon them how visually sophisticated you are. So you want to pick an interesting image. You don't want to pick some cartoon image that a 5-year-old would pick. That's okay, it gets across the idea, but it doesn't really make raise the level of communication. What you're trying to do here is not only solve the image problem of understanding the term, but you're doing it in a way that says, this is who I am. This is what I think of. So you want to look for terms. You want to look for an image that you find compelling, that you think your audience will find compelling. And if you have to search through a lot, so be it. Now, I got to these pages by putting in team player, but I already have in mind, in my head, an image that I'm thinking of. And so instead of searching for team player, I'm going to put in skydive formation, because I'm thinking of people jumping out of airplanes and coming together. And yeah, that image here, that's a dynamic image. So I'm going to select this fourth image here. And when you see that I do, it has a blue check mark on it here. And I have a little option at the bottom to insert. So when I click on insert, that puts that image into that spot for me. So that is me expressing what team player is all about. These guys jump out of a freaking airplane, and then they have the discipline to come together into a formation. And that's visually expressing it to me. Now you're going to think differently, and you're going to have different uh, preconditions. Those of you that are video gamer guys, and I'm talking to a video gamer company, maybe you'll want to have a predominance of video gamer images, and you'll want to look for images that say problem solver or creative or self starter in that regard. I'm sure there's no end of World of Warcraft imagery that shows people being self starters or adventurers or whatnot. So you've got to figure out who you're talking to and how you want to express yourself. And then I want you to find the image that isn't just an image that works, but is an image that works for you, that is the one that expresses who you are. Now, that's a high bar. But this is what it means to be an artist. You don't go for the cheap win. You go for the tough thing that elevates the discussion. And so this is a good exercise for honing your skills for finding the kind of images that I think you want to put into your presentation. And you may or may not end up using one of these terms that you want to illustrate in your voiceover, but these are the kinds of things that you might end up having in your voiceover, and you might want to figure out a way to illustrate it. And so this exercise is just to hone those skills. And, again, uh, you're not turning it in for a grade or anything. It's just to try to do it. And you can do all five or you can do one, but I would like you to participate. And if we go to the discussion board, you'll see that in the discussion board, I have linked to this page here. So anybody who's watching on the video can get to this page and can participate as well throughout the week. So we can continue this discussion about picking images and so forth. But I'll let you guys continue to work on this, and I'm going to get back to the slides here. But visualizing ideas, it's something that'll just help you hone your skills for picking those slides once you've got your story put together. But how do you put your story together? How do you choose to tell a story about yourself? Well, for a lot of you, it's going to just be a simple matter of chronology. I started off playing video games at 5, and then I, got to this level, and then I started making my own uh, uh, levels and sending in bug notices, and then I went to school and learned how to do X, Y, and Z. You're going to tell it in the order that it happens. For a lot of us, our life story, it happens in chronological order. It makes sense in chronological order. But that's not the only way to tell a story. As you were watching the emotional story pieces last week, you'll notice that there's just 1,000 different ways to tell a story. And so you want to find the one that makes the most sense for you. And to that end, I put a couple of videos in the discussion board this week for you to look at. And the first one I want you to watch is called Start With Why by Simon Sinek. It's actually a TED Talk. So some of you may have actually come across it in the first week, but I don't really remember it being in any of the ones that I had centered up. But Simon Sinek is a really terrific speaker. And we mentioned that telling your story or presenting yourself to a dream employer is a little bit like reading your resume. And that reading your resume is a really dull thing to do. That's the kind of thing that would make for a bad PowerPoint. And why is that? Well, your resume is a list of the things that you've done. And that's what resumes are. It's important. But because it's just a list of things, it doesn't really connect. It doesn't really have a context. And that's why it's just boring data. And the big revelation that Simon Sinek gives us is if you're reading your resume, you're telling us what you did. And he says, turn it on its ear and don't tell us what you did. Tell us why you did each one of those things. Each item on your resume, as you go and you look at it, don't just say, I worked at, Joe's Mortuary for 2 years. Tell us why you did that and what you learned out of it and what was your intrinsic motivation. Those are the things that are really interesting to us. So you can go through the items in your life, the items in your resume, and talk about them, but don't say what you did, say why you did. Start with why. Give us that intrinsic motivation. What sent you out the door? What made you join the army? What made you take up the violin? What made you want to dedicate your life to making video games? And if you tell us why, then that's going to be much more interesting than just saying what you did. And that becomes an easy way to figure out how to tell your life story. There are people who are just so stuck and think that, well, nobody wants to hear what I did. My life's boring. If you look at it from a different angle, if you try to dissect it, if you figure out why you did the things you did, you come up with a compelling story that is something that everyone wants to hear. So I think that's a revelatory video, and I think a lot of you are going to find that something that helps you put your narrative together. The second one is a little more complicated. It's called How to Structure a Video Essay by Tony Zhou. And what he's done is he's looking at an Orson Welles documentary that has not one subject, not two subjects, not three subjects, but 6 different subjects. And it isn't 6 films put together. It's 6 topics discussed in the course of a single film. And the way it's structured is that introduce a topic, talk about it for so long, and then just move on to something else. And then once they've introduced all 6 topics, he has the freedom to randomly come back to each one and tell you a little bit more about each. And as you're going through the film, they start to converge. They start to make a little bit more sense. One of the ways you can think of it is like one of these large epic dramas like Game of Thrones, where there started out being 75 different plots in all kinds of different locations. And as you're watching each episode, there might be 3 or 5 minutes with the dragon lady, and then somebody up in the ice, and then the evil queen, and so forth. And you're just jumping around, telling a little bit of each story. And as the entire series progresses, if you think of Game of Thrones as one long film, it's about 75 hours long. Eventually, all those many, many episodes converge into one. Now, that's telling a story in parallel. You're certainly not doing anything as ambitious as Game of Thrones. You're not even doing anything as ambitious as what Orson Welles is trying to do with a 90-minute film. But for some of you, you've got fairly complicated lives, and you're not 100% sure why you did all the things you did. Why did you spend, 4 years on the road with Barry Manilow and then join the Navy? Maybe there are different parts of your life that are fulfilling different needs, and you need to tell that story in a specialized way. But eventually, everything comes together. You will be able to synthesize those ideas. And the interesting thing that Tony Zhou does in this video is he compares it to South Park, the animated cartoon, because every single episode of South Park follows the exact same structure. It's 22 minutes long. There are 3 different things that happen each week, and their stories are told in parallel, and all 3 things converge at the end as a kind of joke or punchline. And that's a regular structure. And it is a way of telling a story that has multiple parts that don't necessarily lend themselves to sequential action. And that's not something that is going to be the right way to tell a story for everybody. But for somebody, maybe that works. So think about structure. Think about the how and why you want to put things together, and that will help you to craft the story that you want to put together. Another thing that's going to help you is thinking about your relationship to the audience. Part of the reading we're going to do this week has to do with something that's 3,000 years old from Aristotle. It's called the 3 Pillars of Public Speaking. In ancient Greece, people got up and spoke in public an awful lot. It was almost an entertainment kind of thing. They were very much like into beat poetry and things. And Aristotle looked at a lot of public speaking, and he realized that there were 3 different strategies that a speaker had to associate with his audience depending on his/her relationship to them. So the three pillars of public speaking are about how you come across to your audience. And you can plan this ahead of time and it helps you to determine what you want to say. So those three types are ethos, the appeal to trust or credibility. So you can speak straight to your audience and be telling them exactly what you want. This is very much about hail. That audience believes you because you're believable, because you're authentic, because you have a resume that says you did something, or you have a lived experience that says you did something, or you just have a good, honest face. You look like Tom Hanks, and people are tending to believe you. Ethos is the appeal to trust or credibility. You can relate to the audience because they accept you as a narrator. They're not going to question what you have to say, or feel like you're trying to put one over them or not. The second type of appeal is the appeal to pathos. That's the appeal to emotion. So if you feel like people aren't necessarily going to have a great amount of trust in what you have to say because you don't have a lot of experience, or you're not feeling really comfortable on the stage or anything, then one way to overcome that is to show them how much you care about things. You can appeal to their emotions. This is a strategy that students often use when they're trying to get a job with someone who has a lot more experience than they do. You can't come across as their equal, so you come across as someone with a great deal of passion, and you're trying to remind them of when they were young and they were just getting started in video games or filmmaking, or whatever the topic is that you're working with. So the appeal to pathos is trying to pull at someone's heartstrings. It's a different kind of statement than being authoritative or telling them the actual truth. You're shading what you have to say with emotion, and you're hoping that the audience is swept up with you. The third kind of appeal is called logos. It's the appeal to logic. This is where you're building in a very particular case, and you're expecting the audience to be skeptical. You don't expect them to trust you, but you expect them to trust what you have to say. What you say is very carefully put together and often is footnoted or referenced. So if you tell them a fact, you say where that fact came from. You might use charts and graphs, but you're building a case in which when someone listens to what you have to say, they can't find any fault with it. The appeal to logic is uh, a value-based case saying that everything I have to say has been backed up and uh, uh, reinforced, and you don't have any choice but to believe what I have to say because I've covered all the bases of which you could say uh, that is out there. That means that the statements that you make can't be emotion laden, they can't be opinionated, they have to be based on facts. So the appeal to logic is often fairly dry, but it is also very solid and rigid, and it is a very strong form of argument. So each of these have different questions that the audience asks or thinks about. In ethos, the audience asks, does the audience respect you? Does the audience believe that you're a good character? Does the audience believe that you're generally trustworthy? Does the audience believe that you're an authority on this topic? Now, an authority sometimes means that you've got a PhD after your title. It oftentimes means that you just simply have lived experience. You could be, someone who's never gotten a huge education, but you're wanting to speak to them on the topic of cancer, and the reason that you're an authority is your mother died and you lived through it, and you're speaking from experience about the lived experience that you have. So uh, authority doesn't necessarily always come from a resume or a degree. Sometimes it comes from lived experience, but you have to be able to convince people that that is a true and authentic lived experience. Pathos. This one can go in a lot of different directions. You have to be careful with it. Do your words evoke feelings of love, uh, sympathy, fear? So when you first start out using pathos, you want someone to like you. You want someone to feel good. And so you're thinking about pictures of puppies. You're thinking about happy images. But pathos can go both ways. You can get people angry as well. You can make people feel contempt for other things. So uh, the appeal to pathos isn't always about promoting yourself. Sometimes it's about downgrading the other. Do your visuals evoke feelings of compassion or envy? Does your characterization of the competition evoke feelings of hate or contempt? So political advertising is very much based on this. Oftentimes, a political candidate can't promote him or herself, so they end up knocking the other guy. And you have what we call negative advertising in politics, in which the entire point is to just knock the other guy. Now, this doesn't really going to apply to us in this situation because I do not want you comparing yourself to any other students. When you speak to your dream audience, it's your 3 or 4 minutes to just say whatever you want about yourself. I often hear a lot of students trying to uh, arrange their presentation, and they add in negative questions that they have to overcome, like, why should I hire you? Why should you even say that? This is your 3 or 4 minutes, and you get to set the frame. You don't have to pretend that it's a resume or that it's a real world office interview where someone's going to be mean to you. This is your time to occupy the audience's head. And if you do not introduce negative thoughts, then there's no need to overcome them. And if you do not talk about your other people looking for your job, then you do not have to compete against them. So make sure when you're doing this particular presentation for your dream job that you just make it all about yourself, because the audience is not uh, predisposed to be comparing you to other people or thinking about the competition. This is their time to focus on you, and you get to say whatever you want. So it's only when you introduce those negative thoughts that someone might bring in those comparisons. But one of the problems with pathos is that you have to understand that if you're introducing negative emotions, that it can get out of bounds. That you can't always control it. You have to be very careful to know how the audience is going to react in order to be able to use this as a proper strategy. But this is a very powerful tool. And in Logos, it's almost like putting together a court case. You're the lawyer summing up at the end. Does your message make sense? Is your message based on facts, statistics, and evidence? And very positively, will your call to action at the end lead to the desired outcome you promised? You're in a Logos-based appeal. You're building very specifically to the takeaway. And if you're a programmer and you're trying to convince them that you should be hired, you're telling them what languages that you use and what programs you've built and what experiences you've had, and everything leads to the conclusion that I'm the right person for the job. So logos-based appeal is all about getting directly to the takeaway. The takeaway should be the exact action that you want to have happen. Someone hires you, someone buys your product, someone signs on to your campaign, someone signs on to your cause. That call to action is exactly where everything has been headed from the entire argument. So these things overlap sometimes. It's rare for them all to overlap completely, but sometimes you might have something that has both ethos and pathos or ethos and logos, etc. So overlap is possible. Complete overlap of all three rarely happens, but if you do, then certainly you're guaranteed to have people's attention. But for the most part, you decide what your relationship to the audience is, and you think about how can I use that to gain an edge. So that's where we're headed with this. I want you to put these presentations together this week, and then what we're going to do is next week we're going to get feedback, and you're going to get a chance to make them even better. But this week I want a complete presentation. I don't want people to hear rough draft when we say first draft. I want a complete presentation this week. And then we'll see how we could make it better. You're going to get a chance to do that improvement with feedback. And that's what we want to use that 3.3 discussion board for. So as soon as you've created a project and you want to get feedback on it, post it in the discussion board, and we're going to get a chance to make things better by hearing from our classmates and stuff. So we have a couple of people got started here. So looks like we're finding some really compelling images. Sierra's creativity image looks really amazing. I was digging Brian's adventurous image earlier. That's a pretty cool one from Christopher. So I think you guys get this. I think that you know what makes a compelling image, how you can get through across to other people. So a couple of things I wanted to mention today. We wanted to talk about alternative programs. So most of you are going to work in PowerPoint. You got the latest PowerPoint that you've downloaded this month, or you're going to work in Adobe Spark. I found Adobe Spark to be very simple to use. If you tried it last week and you liked it, I would recommend that you kind of stay with it. But you have the freedom to use anything you want. And those of you that are in video programs, you can use video editing programs as well. If you know how to use them already, if you know how to use Final Cut Pro or iMovie or Adobe Premiere, you're free to use those. But if you haven't ever used them before, they're very complicated programs. So I don't recommend that you try anything difficult. This is the time to use programming or to use software that gets out of your way so that you can just be creative. So there's a link in the discussion board. Let me come back to the discussion board here. So you can see that I've linked to several things here. So I've got a link to Adobe Spark, VoiceThread. If you're using an older Android phone and it has fewer options for media, I know a lot of you on the phones aren't able to do as many things as you wish you could do. VoiceThread is a program that allows you to put slides together and will record your audio and works on older Android phones. You can get it in the Google Play store. So that's something I recommend there. And then there's a couple of software programs, eMaze, Prezi, Haiku Deck, Google Slides. I've got a link here to an article that has many different programs on it. And so you can read through here. Haiku Deck is something I highly recommend. It has really great art that you can choose from that is Creative Commons. I recommend against Powtoons. Do not use Powtoons. If you're previously a member of Powtoons, you might be okay. But if you've never used Powtoons before, they're in a bait and switch mode where they'll let you make something, but if you try to get it out, they'll make you pay a fee to upgrade. So don't ever start with them. We've had a lot of people that like to use them because they have pre-recorded canned art, but we don't want you guys to have to pay Powtoons any money. So if they're going to pull that stuff, please don't use them. I advise against Powtoons. Keynote is a Mac version of PowerPoint, and it has a lot of graphic design features, so we highly recommend that. There's a lot of really good ones. eMaze has a lot of good visual tropes that you can use to set up your presentation with. They have gallery walls and different ways of running through the material that are very interesting. But I don't like presentations that call a lot of attention to themselves. I want you to be concentrating on your content, and the presentation should get out of the way. So to that extent, focus on the slides and not on the transitions. For instance, in PowerPoint, there are amazing transitions, but I don't want you to use them because they just distract. We just want to go from slide to slide to slide in the most quick and efficient manner that we can. But there are lots of interesting slide presentations here. If you guys have particular choices, please speak up in the discussion board and recommend what you like to other people. We also have a couple of tips here on how to use your iPhone, the voice memo function, to record your voice. If you're using an iPhone, that's the best way to make an audio recording. If you're using Android, there's a variety of audio apps that you can get from the Google Play Store, and so we link to those and have an article about that. And if you're using a Mac or a PC, we recommend software called Audacity. It's open source software, which means that it's free. It's available for Mac or PC, and it's very easy to use. And the way that it works basically is that it gives you a visual readout of your waveform as you're recording. I'm going to turn it on right now and start recording. So I'm recording right now, and as I'm talking, it's capturing the voice. And if I make a mistake, I can correct it. And one of the things that you can do very quickly with Audacity is just to select, like if that were a flub, if I'd made a mistake in speaking, I could just select it, hit delete, and get rid of it. So if you're the kind of person that is afraid of recording for 3 or 4 minutes because you think you're going to make a bunch of mistakes and you're going to have to record it 700 times, this is using Audacity is a terrific way to work, because what you can do is keep recording, and every time you make a mistake, just keep the thing running. Don't stop it when you make a mistake. Just be silent for 2 or 3 seconds. What'll happen when you're silent for 2 or 3 seconds? The audio goes nil. And so you can find that. You'll have a long blank spot. So just pick up where you made the mistake and keep going. And you'll get all the way through it, and then you'll have to come back. And every time you see a place where you made a mistake, you can select that term, get rid of the bad part, and delete it. And then you'll go from good cut to good cut. It's very easy to do. It's something. It's audio editing that you don't have to be an audio professional to be able to do, and that helps you because you can record this all the way through without worrying about starting completely over. Now, there's an advantage to starting over, which is that it's rehearsal. The more you speak your voiceover out loud, the better you're going to be at it. The more familiar you're going to be with the terms, and believe me, every time someone writes something and they record it for the first time without ever having read it out loud, we can tell in the audio. There is a way that you sound when you're reading something for the first time. There are pauses you put in because you're reading and not speaking that come through to the reader. So rehearsal gets rid of all that. If you just say if you say your voiceover text out loud once to yourself without recording it, the next time you do it will be better. But if you do it again and you do it again, it's even better. And it doesn't take very long at all. We're not talking about a really long presentation here. So the more rehearsal you have, the more familiar you become with these terms. The more familiar you are with what you're saying, the more you can start to use your vocal toolbox, that you can start to have inflections and pauses, and that you can actually read your text with a little bit of timing change so that people can understand that you're at the end of a sentence and that you've come to the end of a paragraph and so forth. So that's something that's important. In fact, let me try that for you. I'm just going to, I don't know how much time it's going to take, but I actually have a preface of a book here. I'm reading this book called Sapiens. It's the story of humanity, and it has a very interesting opening preface. And I'm going to record that right now. That'll be my text. And let's see if I can do it with vocal toolbox technique. So I'm going to hit record. About 13.5 billion years ago, matter, energy, time, and space came into being in what is known as the Big Bang. The story of these fundamental features of our universe is called physics. About 300,000 years after their appearance, matter and energy started to coalesce into complex structures called atoms, which then combined into molecules. The story of atoms, molecules, and their interactions is called chemistry. About 3.8 billion years ago, on a planet called Earth, certain molecules combine to form particularly large, intricate structures called organisms. The story of organisms is called biology. About 70,000 years ago, organisms belonging to the species Homo sapiens started to form even more elaborate structures called cultures. The subsequent development of these human cultures is called history. Well, darn it, I was hoping to make a mistake there so that I could correct the mistake for you. I'm familiar enough with that text, I guess, that I didn't make a mistake. But you could also tell that I was changing my inflection so that I was giving emphasis to particular words. Now, that's something that you can't do on your first read off. You've got to understand what the text is about. But once you do that, you can read with intention and you can make more or less sell your text. But with a recording like this, if there were a particular point that I wanted to clean up and get rid of, if this was a word that I mistake, if I had coughed or said or something like that, I could just simply select it and get rid of it, and now it would go straight through. So Audacity is easy to use. You can use it even if you're using a program that has audio. It works for a Mac and PC. It allows you to export to different file types: MPEG-4, WAV, MP3, etc. MP3 or MPEG-4 are probably the best, but you will need to make your own audio if you're going to do something online. Adobe Spark will record audio, PowerPoint will record audio, VoiceThread will record audio, nothing else will. So if you're working in Prezi, you'll need to record the audio on your own, and that's, again, why we recommend that you have these programs. And if you're on a I can't remember how to quit this. Quit Audacity, cancel. Audacity. No. All right, there we go. All right. So if you're on a phone and you're recording, all you need to do is to transfer the file off the phone or combine the file with the phone with another program that you're using online. And again, it's probably going to be best on your phone if you use an online tool like Adobe Spark with the web browser of your phone than if you're trying to record something or you're trying to create media directly within the phone itself. There is an iOS version of PowerPoint for the phone, an iPhone version, but it actually doesn't record audio. So you're better off using other programs for that. There is something else. The final thing I wanted to do today was talk to you about something that's in PowerPoint, which is kind of hidden. The interesting thing about PowerPoint, it has so many features that a lot of them they can't make visible. And that's pretty annoying. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to make a short PowerPoint here. So I'm going to make a title slide. This is the first slide that comes up is a title slide. So I'm going to call that My Brand. And I'm going to add another title. And I'm just going to put a 2 there. And another title. And I'll put a 3 there. And one more title. That'll be enough to do a slideshow with. So I now have an opening title and 3 other slides. Now, the deal with PowerPoint is that you can record audio, and they don't necessarily tell you what extra options they have, but they have hidden options that are available once you create audio. So for everyone who's using PowerPoint, you have to put your audio on slide 1. People think that you can't move audio from slide to slide, so they end up putting audio on all the slides. That's a terrible way to run PowerPoint. That's one of the reasons that PowerPoint gets screwed up, is because people don't realize that you can't do the thing that you should do, so you do an alternative thing. But you do have the ability to have a single piece of audio going across all the slides in PowerPoint. And the way to do that is to be on slide 1 and to record your audio. So to record audio, you come to Insert, Audio, Record Audio. So there's a recorder function built into PowerPoint. And if you open it up, it's not quite as full-featured as Audacity. Audacity is a complete program. This is just a little feature inside PowerPoint. So you can't see the waveform, you can't edit it. If you don't get a perfect recording, you have to just re-record it again. But if I turn this on and start recording, I'm recording audio right now. So this would be how I would record my 3 to 4 minute voiceover audio. And when I'm done, I hit Insert, and I now have an audio file on my first slide. Now, I needed to do this because as we look at all these options here, there's a whole bunch of options here. There's 8 menus, but really there are 2 hidden menus that you can't see right now. And if I select audio, it's on my desktop right now, but it's not selected. When I select it, suddenly there are 2 more menus available. You will never see these menus unless you already create audio and then you select the audio, but they are absolutely necessary. So if you select the audio and you come back to the playback menu, then you want to tell the audio to play automatically. We don't want people to have to click to engage the audio. And very importantly, bullet below it, play across the slides. You have to engage these 2 features in order for the kind of PowerPoint that I'm asking you to make to be possible. And my PowerPoint doesn't tell you this is here. It's here. I'm telling you it's here. But you'd really have to be looking at some advanced course or reading a huge manual to find it. And that's one of the issues. Things aren't completely self-evident. And that's difficult. But when the program is as large and featured as PowerPoint, that's kind of the options that they have, one of the things they have to do. But once I have put my audio on slide 1 and I've made the option for it to play automatically and play across slides, now I have the ability to move that audio in and out of these slides. And here's how you do that. You go to Slideshow, Record Slideshow. When I do that, I'm going to go into playback mode, and it's going to start playing my audio. You can see right now. Turn this on and start recording. I'm recording. And when I click, I can advance slides. This would be, and I can put so much of the audio on each slide. And I'm making the choices from going to audio to slide. At the end, it asks me to save it. When I do, it comes back and it tells me that it put 4 seconds of my audio on slide 1, 3 seconds of my audio on slide 2, 2 seconds of my audio on slide 3, and 1 second of my audio on slide 4. So if you had a 4-minute voiceover and you had 15 or 20 slides, you could go through and select the correct point for each one to come in. And if you didn't like the sync, all you'd have to do is come back and run it again. Just re-record it. But once you've recorded it, PowerPoint remembers that order and will play it back. So this is one of the great powers of PowerPoint, that it has the ability to let you sync it over and over and over again until you get it exactly the way you want it. Now, another thing to remember is if you use fancy transitions, it really messes up with these timings. So don't use fancy transitions. Just go from slide to slide. Use cuts, use slides, pushes, but don't engage, all that fireworks and screens falling and the special stuff that people do when they don't really have any content in their video. Just leave that stuff out of your video. It only distracts. So you can get a good recording, and once you've got it playing back the way you want it, you can turn that in as a PowerPoint file. So you can turn in the PowerPoint file, and it'll be self-running. The audio will play. It'll go from slide to slide. I can just open it up in my version of PowerPoint and watch it, and that's a perfect way to turn in the presentation. The file format for a PowerPoint is PPTX, and you can just drag and drop it onto the the assignment board. So right here, if you have a file, you can drag and drop it here. Incidentally, don't forget to watch this video. It's a very good reminder about storytelling and so forth, stuff that we've seen before, but it's a good refresher. So this is due at the end of the week on Sunday. Take all week. There's no point in getting it done early. Use as much time as you can. Make as much content as you can. And please use multiple slides. I don't want 3 or 4 complex slides that hang on for a minute each. I want multiple slides that create motion and pace. A good rule of thumb is that no slide should ever be on for more than 20 seconds. And it would be good to have at least 5 or 6 slides per minute. So if you're doing a 4-minute presentation, 20 slides is not unreasonable. So that's what I'd like to see in the presentation. And again, you want to choose your slides after you have created the actual presentation, the voiceover itself. So anybody that has trouble with PowerPoint, just get a hold of me. I'm here all week. I'm here to solve any technical problems you have. So if you're having trouble with your phone, if you're having trouble finding something that you can work with on your phone to make a presentation, get a hold of me. I want to make sure that you're comfortable, but the most important thing to do is to get that 3-minute voiceover. So if you do not get any slides done this week, but you get a 3 to 4 minute piece of audio done, I'll be much happier than the converse. So don't spin your wheels. If you're not sure what you use as a presentation program, just concentrate on the audio, but get me that story first. Once you've got the story, then I can give you lots of options for putting the presentation together. So do I have any questions here? I know I rambled on a lot, but I really wanted to get you guys on a good footing here. I think this is a really good group, and I think that if you use the software that you find most communicative to you, you're going to really make something terrific here. Anybody have any questions? Somebody at least say no. Can we still make a video presentation? Absolutely. If you work in Adobe Spark, you can export as a video. And if you make it a video, that's even better. So these programs allow you to put these things together. A lot of things allow you to export. Even PowerPoint, once you've created a PowerPoint presentation, you can export it as a video. But if you have a way to make this a video presentation, and Brian says he has a subscription to Camtasia. So one thing you can do, if you don't want to record the audio in PowerPoint, you can make the slides in PowerPoint and run the slideshow and talk over it and make a movie of your desktop. So Camtasia and a lot of other screen capture programs allow you to do that. That's a perfectly legitimate way to put the presentation together. And if you have to use software that puts watermarks on the slides, that's fine. I'm not worried about that at all. So if I can, anything you can use that helps you to put your slides together, I'm up for it. And anything I can do to help you work with them, I think I want to make sure that you know what your options are. So have a great week. Be really creative and have fun. That's the number one rule this week is you're being creative. You come here to Full Sail to be creative. I'm asking you to make a presentation, have fun with it, enjoy it, and know that you're being an artist and getting paid for it. So cool beans. Have a great week, everybody.